boating. Welcome
Boating.
to the Cool Friends Show with my friend Zach Kauffman. And this is a show where I just talk to cool friends of mine. Zach, will you agree that we're friends?
Yes, I believe we are friends, and we've been friends for quite a long period of time, actually.
It's been a long time. Back to the Morrison's days.
Yeah. Back to really our connection started when we were kind of rallying together to promote the Rogue River Canyon, and that was really the beginning of our journey. And then, of course, when I moved here, you were a great fit for starting in with the ambassadorship as well with us. And that was the beginning of SUP in the river. And I took a few boards off your hands in the early days. And
SUP boards,
my kids beat the crap out of those with myself, and yeah. So I mean, it's been a while. And if you think about even that time frame of just when did you first start seeing SUP on the river? Zach and Zach have been communicating for at least 4 or 5 years before that.
Yeah, I mean, my first time I tried supping for real was on a fiberglass board. And that was the board I ended up selling you, the one I beat up on the Rogue. I swam probably 40 times taking it down the Rogue.
Oh, yeah, and, that C4.
That C4, yeah. Before inflatable boards were the thing. And now there's such a thing that it's on a poster behind your shoulder.
That's right. I mean, right here. Oh, right there.
Other side. But I mean, I was reading this up. I feel like it had its heyday, I don't know, 5 or 10 years ago. Is it still a thing? Are people still doing it?
So yes and no. I mean, it's definitely, I mean, if you talk to our friend Paul Clark, I mean, it's definitely still a thing back east, really big. He has, folks that he paddles with that do these meetups, and they'll have 25, 30 people show up.
Wow.
I mean, you can do a meetup here in Southern Oregon, you'll have 2 people show up, maybe. And both of them,
Covey and Paul.
Right. So, so we basically, we were pretty big in it in the Sawyer station. And, just last year, we really started kind of shifting our focus of our demo to not just be focused on SUP. And, there's been a couple big things that I think have really affected it. And one is the flood of just really low quality boards that anybody can just you can get into it for, $300 brand new, full package, everything. But they're not grasping the knowledge, and they're not learning anything about the sport and how to be safe with it. And I mean, my wife and I were on just the middle Rogue where we do a fishing run, and we're in the drift boat, pulled over, and we see these people come by, 2 folks on boards from Costco, more than likely. They don't have leashes on. They don't have life jackets on. They have life jackets lashed to the board. They don't have helmets on. And the guy is out front kind of pointing and yelling to the gal behind him. And he was still standing up when he came past us. And she was just in panic and basically on her knees, oh my gosh, what's going on? And it was just kind of I looked at that and I'm just that's the challenge right there. Educating those folks to realize that, this is actually more than just floating on a lake. You're on a river, and there's shallow rocks and eddy lines and so many
that's just people that bought cheap boards and went out. But the whitewater, I would say in the whitewater community, SUP was actually growing quite a bit, whatever it was 10 years ago. But I just don't hear about it much anymore, unless I check SUP Paul's or Covey's Facebook page. It's just there used to be a crew in Hood River that went all the time, and now there's just a couple people that go once a month.
Yeah. I mean, my oldest kid, Alec, who you met just a few months ago, he's pretty avid SUP paddler, and every time he does the lower Rogue on the SUP, we usually see a couple other folks with SUPs on trips. but it's still kind of more of a, a novelty thing. It's not something where you see a sup on every multi-day trip,
Yeah.
But, we've definitely seen people that would come in and they would buy an inflatable sup to go on their multi-day setup. And most of them would be like, yeah, we just blow it up at camp and, paddle around camp. We maybe run a couple little rapids and, when they can throw it on the back of their stack of gear, then it's, it's just kind of that extra thing. So I think it kind of made some headway there, but there was a place in Gold Hill that tried to do rentals and they just went up, full on crash and burn. But we still have them and we still paddle, and there's a handful of folks that are still interested in it, and usually we get the person that got into it, kind of realized that the inexpensive board they got wasn't really up for what they wanted to do.
Yeah.
And so
it's like, I think it's like everything in gear. You get what you pay for. There's a reason things cost a lot. They're that much better. If you spend the money, you're going to get the right thing.
Right.
That performs better. That like you're gonna have more fun on, probably be safer on if you just spend the extra money to get the thing. Okay, so Zach, we got sidetracked on SUP.
Yeah,
I want to introduce you. I don't think people realize what a badass you are, and so I mean, most people probably know. A lot of people know. Like you're would you call you the CEO of Sawyer, the owner? What's your title at Sawyer?
So yeah, I mean, I'm the administrative side of Sawyer. I am a 50-50 partner owner of the company, and I own the company with my partner Israel, who runs the manufacturing part. So the easiest way that I explain to people is that Israel and I are 50-50 partners, and he makes sure it gets built and I make sure it gets sold. And that's it. It's like, you build it, I'll sell it. And it works out really well because we've got his aspect of keeping an eye on the operation and the QC, and he deals with the factory solely. I don't really get involved with hiring, firing, and training in the factory folks. I mainly just deal with the sales team and oversee the retail store. And, as you and several of my other friends have noticed, I don't really travel and do trade shows anymore.
Yeah, we miss you.
But, I mean, I answer that question with like, I mean, it's like we have to meet on a social outing because, me going to a trade show is just taking 2 or 3 days away from the operation, and I need to keep the wheels on the bus. Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at. And we that whole piece went into play right before COVID. And so 2019, we started the initial partner buyout for one of the partners, and now we're in the middle of the second partner. So we were in 2019, we were 3 partners and even thirds, and then we started buying that person out a couple years back.
Wow.
And so yeah, we're basically running the 2 different sides of it, and Israel kind of learns a little bit more of my side, but I'm the contact with the public. And, a lot of people that have Googled Sawyer realize that there's only one address that's really public, and that's 404 2nd Avenue in Gold Hill.
Sawyer Station, right?
They go into Sawyer Station. They're like, so where do you build these things? Where's that at?
Yeah.
They're looking for the factory, like around the back or something. It's like, but yeah, I mean, so that's kind of where we've been and what my whole role is. And yeah, it's been quite a ride ever since I left outfitting, which was, now about 12 years ago.
It's been a while. And that's why I don't think as many people know about anymore is you have a whole separate career, like long career in the guiding and outfitting world. And I think I'm going to try to sum it up, and then you can fill in the holes of things get right. You started guiding an adventure center in Southern Oregon?
Actually, before the adventure center, prior to the adventure center was actually, I was guiding at SOU at the college. Okay. And back then there were a lot of us that guided for the college, and the local companies would just kind of hire us out on busy weekends. And I was once told by Noah Haig of the NOAA wilderness trips and NOAA day trips. He's like, you know, you guys that come from the outdoor program, we never really know much about you, but you're always eager to accept the job. And I was like, yeah, well, you know, we're just out here teaching ourselves. And that was kind of it. You know, I mean, I basically worked at the outdoor program, and when I was doing it, these school groups would come and stay at the college. You know, they'd be international exchange programs or music programs or football camps or cheerleading camps or something, would come to the college, and part of their stay with this week that they were at the college would be a raft trip. And so you would just get this printout that, you know, it was a monthly printout. So there was never anything that you had to like scramble for. It was like, you would get this printout and it's like, oh, July, we have 47 elder hostel on this day and 27, you know, foreign exchange students on this other day. And that's it. And the rest of the time it's like, all right, well, we've got all these toys here. Let's go run rivers. And so we did. And then I got hired. The first company I got hired from was a company that doesn't exist anymore. It was called Eagle Sun. And that was actually, I never heard of that. Yeah, that was the son of Bill Smith Sr., who actually owned Rogue Klamath River Adventures, another company that doesn't exist anymore. And
but Adventure Center is another company that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, so
there's
a
whole bunch of legendary companies that don't exist anymore.
You know, there's companies after I've left haven't survived. I don't know what I can read into that, but
maybe you left and your leadership. Without your leadership, they fell apart.
Yeah, they were mostly, you know, they were all kind of transitional moments, you know, and. You know, I mean, one of these things I tell any young guy that wants input is like, you know, it's a commodity. You know, you're a traveling gypsy. You can pretty much write your own schedule if you want to pursue it. You know, I mean, you know, even here just locally, Rogue day trips and Rogue multi-days. You know, there are always people hiring, and then also, I mean, I think one of the real challenges is like these groups like the Helfriches, where they have the summer stuff, but then they have this fall fishing piece. And you know, I mean, I did that for a while when they were starting to figure out that, hey, if we find somebody that knows how to run the river, then we can teach them how to fish. Like, we don't want to find people that know how to fish and then teach them how to row a hard boat down the canyon. That's the wrong way to go about it. And I think that's the biggest challenge for like companies that are looking for an exit strategy or looking for a way to kind of not be the one on the river all the time. But, you know, those fishing trips, it's pretty much, there's always their owner operated run. It's like, you know, anytime when I was guiding down there, the owner would be on the trip. He'd be running one of the boats. And, you know, that's not nearly the case like on the rafting side. You know, but it definitely is part of the deal with the fishing side. And also, you know, I mean, it's kind of a different kind of margin. You know, you got 2 anglers per boat, and, you know, 12 people is a max trip, but you got 6 guides. You know, I mean, you can crunch the numbers on that. You know,
fishing is a whole different beast. It's a whole different thing. But like, so you started. What's interesting to me is like you started in the whitewater world, and you like did some odd, like legit guiding, Upper Klamath. Cal Salmon, Scott, all those like really awesome rivers. And then you transitioned into drift boat guiding, and you worked your way up, and you were running Morrison's, the whole whitewater fishing operation at the end before you left that to work for Sawyer. And I think that's like you have a legit background. Like, not everybody in the industry does. You definitely do. I don't know if everybody realizes like how much history you have in the sport. I do, for sure. Like I respect a lot of respect.
You know, and it's just one of those things, you know, I mean, it's like, as you keep doing it, you know, I mean, like I go on the river and my kids are just like, you know, they're just like, like, Dad, you know everybody on the river. It's like this is the only place I see people. It's like, I go down the lower road and it's like I'm pulling over into camp. It's like, hey, how's it going? Was that you on the middle chute throwing duffel bags of beer off there? I was like, oh yeah, that was me. But yeah, and it was even more so. It was more so when I was guiding, down the lower road, because that was really when I would really only see people. Now, of course, I see them occasionally when they come by the factory. A lot of them make the mistake of going by the store. So I'll get a message from Bo that, so and so dropped by looking for you.
Oh yeah.
And it's someone I haven't seen in 5, 10, 15 years. And they just did a random flyby to the Sawyer station, and they're like, where's Zach? Doesn't he work here? And they're like, yeah, Zach's over in Talent at the factory where the sawdust is flying. And so I mean, it's like one of those things that we've always kind of been able to pride ourselves at Sawyer. When I got here, all of the folks that were kind of in the sales part of it had a lot of river experience. And I think that still pretty much holds pretty true today. We've had to diversify a bit, but really it was kind of like Sawyer has always kind of been known for, manufacturers building oars by people that use oars.
Yeah.
And so like, that was one of the first things that just I really enjoyed, is like, wow, like, look at this little workshop we've got here. What if we do this and this and this? Can we can we change that to that? It's like, oh yeah, well, we'll build 2 of them and go try it. And I mean, that was one of the things when Paul wanted to do the Super Stick program, when he came down here and sat down with Israel and just drawed everything out on a table, and Israel's like, now let me make sure, is it this or that? And, he's like, yeah. And then he just disappeared, went and did his Paul thing and traveling around, came back like 2 months later, and Israel's like, all right, well, here's paddle 1 and here's paddle 2 and this is paddle 3, and take them out, paddle them, tell us what you like and what you don't like. And he was just like, wow, this is amazing. But I mean, that too comes with its challenges when you're, our art right now that we are trying to refine is mass production of handcrafted products. And it's a challenge.
Yeah.
I mean, COVID basically showed us the limitations as far as just how much we could literally get done in a month.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's interesting. I mean, ironically enough, when I was in high school and growing up with my family, my father actually had a pole building business and then a log furniture business. So I run into people that are, go further back, 40 years back, and they're like, wow, that's great. You're still working with wood. I'm like, it's like, well, yeah, I had about a 30-year hiatus from that working with wood, but I would say I'm back to working with wood. But yeah, I mean, that's what my brothers and I did when we were in high school and early years of college. Is we would just go out and build fences and work on pole barns and that kind of thing. Cool. And, one thing led to another, Well,
let's talk about some gear real quick. And
absolutely.
I have a question for you, and I know you have some products you want to share. I want to talk about Sawyer Orlocks. And
the Black Mamba?
The Black Mamba, which you guys call your website calls the Canyon. But I'm glad you properly call it the Black Mamba, because that's a great name for it.
Yeah, when in proper audiences, you must appease them somewhat.
Appease them. Well, I mean, I don't know if I might be the only one that
we could probably do like a name challenge, and probably put up a.
Why would you do a name challenge? That is the right name for that Orlock. Like, it matches. There's the Cobra and the Black Mamba. Right. And the Sawyer A could be renamed like the Gardner Snake or something like
the Gopher.
Simple. But you don't need to do a challenge. I've already given you brilliance. Black Mamba is such a great name for that Orlock.
Right.
But I think separate than the different types of Orlocks, something I ran into with you a few years ago is how important it is to use Sawyer Orlocks versus other Orlocks, because the Sawyer Orlocks, the manufacturing process, wherever you guys do, they give. So like, I want you to speak about this, like why the Sawyer Orlocks are the ones you want people to use with your oars, and oars are less likely to break if you specifically use the Sawyer ones. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So it all comes down to the material used. And so all of the Orlocks, no matter if it's the A-Lock or the Cobra or the Black Mamba Canyon, basically those are all forged out of Mag 70 bronze alloy. And what it is that basically that material is the strongest but most pliable material for the Orlocks. Also, we have control over that because we work with a foundry in Eugene, Oregon. You know, I mean, a foundry that pours Orlocks, that's a lost art in itself. And, you know, 100%. And a lot of the other Orlocks that are out there, you know, I know there's outfitters that love these steel Orlocks because they don't give. And there's also folks that love, you know, the aluminum Orlocks that doesn't give. But just by actually that statement,
these steel Orlock
that doesn't give. Yep. Now those are actually the biggest benefit of that is that they don't give, but that is a very large, it's a very large, you know,
circle.
Crutch.
Yeah.
You know, so that's basically the piece. But if you really get an oar crabbed and it pounds up into those horns, that oar is going to be compromised. And so, you know, to have an Orlock that doesn't have any give kind of defeats the purpose. You know, I mean, it's like really, you might as well just go for like, I want posi drive on my oars. And if anything happens, I just want to break these and get new ones. And that's kind of the piece. And where we've really encountered it first were rental outfits, because, you know, as you talk with folks about oar management and learning how to row, you know, go to any rental outfit. If you want to see people struggling with rowing, you know, go to any rental outfit and, you know, they're just kind of like, hey, here's your boat, here's your frame, here's your oars, here's all the stuff. This is how it straps down and see you later. It's not like they give them any real, you know, there's not any tutelage or anything, you know, it's just kind of like, you know what you're doing, right? Your credit card says so because you paid for it. So you're going to have at it. And that's where we really saw it first, was someone, you know, some of these rental outfits would be like, hey, you know, Sawyer, we're breaking all these oars. There's something wrong with your oars. And it's like, well, what Orlock are you using? And it's like, bloop. Okay, common denominator every time. Go figure. So that was kind of a real eye opener for folks. And not only that, but you could switch them out to A-locks and problem solved.
Yeah. So an A-lock is just for those of you who don't know, it's just like a very simple shape. It's just a classic. I don't know if I have one here actually. But it looks, this isn't an A, this is an NRS one, but it looks basically like this.
Looks very similar, but it's actually super forged simple. Out of the right material.
Yeah. So if you were to, and I'm not sure what you can say about NRS Orlocks, but from my experience, these don't bend. And so when you use them, you put a Sawyer oar in there, if it doesn't bend, the oar can break. And I've seen this a bunch with friends. I just came to Zach because I recommended another outfitting friend buy Sawyer MXGs because they're awesome. And they broke like 5 oars that season. And we talked about it, and you're like, oh, maybe it's because you're not using Sawyer Orlocks. And that's what happened. And so I don't think that people know that, like the value. It's one of
those things that, you know, there are Orlock manufacturers that choose to go that route. They don't want to have any give, you know, and I guess the biggest thing is that all of our locks are tunable. You know, you and I have talked about this where they are tunable and you can actually tune your horns in or out depending on what you're running. And if an Orlock isn't tunable, that tells you all you need to know.
And by tunable, you mean it's bendable, so you can change
tunable
the size.
Is bendable. You can move the horns in and out, and our entire line is that way. You know, right down to the little mini Cobra. You know, you can still tune that thing in to fit like a small SST ore really well. And we do have people that tune the mini Cobras out to cradle actually a wooden utility ore, because the frame that's on that particular setup that they have is a 1/2 inch socket. And so, you know, if someone's looking for a 1/2 inch socket, they pretty much have to go to either a 1/2 inch A-lock, which we've made that for the boats that are actually, you know, kind of in that medium range of kind of, they're not a tiny craft, but they're not a big craft either. And for some reason, when they build all that frame geometry, they end up with a 1/2 inch ore socket. And so like they got to have a 1/2 inch shank. And so that's why we made the 1/2 inch A-lock, so we can still at least give them that flexibility. And those ores are usually a little shorter, so it's not that big of a deal. But yeah, I mean, you need to have Orlocks that are tunable, hands down.
And from my understanding, the only Orlocks that are tunable are Sawyer Orlocks.
Yes.
Like nobody else makes. And so I don't want to make this a commercial for Sawyer products, which, you know, of course, you have that poster behind you that doesn't help. But I want to make a public service announcement to everybody that you really should be using Sawyer Orlocks, because other Orlocks don't give, and it causes ores to break. Am I saying this right?
Yeah, I mean, they're yeah, absolutely, and they could easily they could inquire at any place they're buying Orlocks, is like, is this Orlock tunable? And then they say, if whoever's selling the Orlock says, what do you mean by tunable? It's like, can I bend that in or out to fit my ore specifically? And they're like, absolutely not. It's forged. It's basically, it's not made to bend.
Boom. Or if the ore hits something, it's gonna come out of the Orlock, because the Orlock's gonna give instead of getting stuck and snapping. And so it's gonna save you all. If you have good ore management and you're perfect at ore management all the time, that's not an issue. But if you make mistakes with your ore management and your ore hits a rock and goes up, if it's not tunable or it doesn't give, you're gonna break ores. And this is the problem my friend saw. Like that once in a while a guy hit a rock or something, and as soon as the ore came up, it snapped.
Yeah. I mean,
they snapped a
like
lot of
those ones you were showing in the beginning. That's the steel ones. You know, those are mostly used by very proficient guides that know what they're doing. So yes, they don't break many ores, but if they do actually crab an ore through there, it's
going to break. Yep.
You know,
I actually
was
using one of these in a class once, and it broke off. Like this thing broke. That's why I only have one now.
That's the other thing. That's the other thing, is that with a tunable Orlock, our ores, all of the Cobras and the Canyons are basically tuned.
Black Mambas.
Black Mambas are tuned in the factory. So because they have to be machined, right? We get them from the foundry.
Yeah.
They're rough. They're not, they're not tuned up yet. And so we have to machine them, and then we actually tune the horns. And that is also testing the pour, because if there's a flaw in the pour, then that horn would just break off. And so more than likely that steel one that broke, it had some pitting or something in there. And that's the thing. I mean, not to really beat anybody that's, buying their Orlocks from out of the country, but you don't really have any control over what's going in that pour. It's just the way it is.
Okay, so I want to talk about Orlocks. I know there's some gear you want to talk about too.
Yes, absolutely. So you may or may not be aware of it, and your viewers may not be aware of it, but we have actually released, I would say, 2 products, one that's very new, and then one that I want to talk a little bit about because I don't think everybody really knows about it yet. First of all, is a really new paddle that we've released, and that's the Slot Canyon. And so you're familiar with the Canyon X, and you're familiar with the Free Fall. So pretty much the Slot Canyon came about from actually product testing with one of our ambassadors. And the Slot Canyon is lighter than a Free Fall, but has all the extra benefits of the full pro tip and the extra carbon that the Free Fall has. And the Canyon X is kind of like more of the lightweight. So we've basically added in the slot canyon to really have kind of your lightweight, then your medium, and your heavy duty whitewater paddle. And the free fall was literally that. It kind of came out in that realm of like the Canyon X was too lightweight. So we went to the free fall, and a lot of the R2 guys were running free falls. People were guiding with free falls. And then we kind of moved towards the slot canyon there. That's really just kind of that middle ground. So if you're really protective of your gear and you don't abuse it a lot, which is not necessarily the case with many river users. So the Canyon X is ideal for someone who likes that lightweight ovalization, and they're not really going to beat on rocks too much. Maybe they're in a river that's, has some nice round, smooth granite boulders and not, volcanic rock that's going to tear everything apart. But it was kind of a big step from the Canyon X to the free fall. And so the slot canyon kind of fills that niche. And so now we kind of have the 3 lines in the whitewater paddles that really kind of follow, which you're probably not going to like this, but basically kind of follow the 3 lines of square tops. Because if you take,
there's 3 lines of square tops.
If you look at the carbon square top, that is very similar to the free fall. And you look at the VLAM square top, that's very similar to
Canyon X.
The Canyon X. And the slot canyon is basically the Dino X version of the square top in the paddle realm. So I just had to take you on that little journey.
Yeah, that's helpful. I would say, like, let me see if I can get it back up here. The Canyon X seems to me like something I would use if I'm like on the South Fork of the American, if I'm on like the Clackamas, I'm like a class 3 boater. Right. I'm not doing anything super technical. I would say that would be what I would want as a good boat. This new slot canyon, I think, is what I would mostly use if I'm guiding middle fork salmon at low water when it's rocky. I'm having to push off on rocks, middle white salmon, maybe like Cherry Creek. Well, nobody paddle guides Cherry Creek, but like harder whitewater where like sometimes you have to push off on a rock or like pry on a rock and it's getting a lot of reps. This is like a durable paddle. The free fall is a little bit insane. Like, I think the free fall is overkill for almost everybody. The free fall, this paddle, it's beefy. This is for those guys who are just like crushing huge drops in remote canyons that can't have their paddle break. You don't have.
And that's
you
kind of
probably
where
have
it came from. It came from that. The paddler that needs that one power stroke to line up for that big drop, and they want that power stroke to be right dead on, right?
Yep.
They don't want to bend a little aluminum shaft and then be like, I'm dropping sideways.
And you're in a convenient canyon where you don't want to bring a zillion spare paddles. Like, you maybe have a spare paddle in case you lose one, but you don't want this thing breaking halfway down. This can be your walking stick on the way down to, like, you're hiking in. Like, it's a beefy paddle. Like, have you ever seen one of these break?
We have seen them break. It does happen. Usually it's kind of a rock in a hard spot kind of situation.
Yeah.
But one of the things we didn't change is that one of the things that people do complain about is just this little lip on the pro tip, right? There's always like this extra protection.
Yeah.
Basically has a little lip, and really more like people that are running rocky rivers that have kind of jagged rock, where like they'll put that paddle in the water and it'll run across that rock, and that little kind of jagged edge of the rock will just kind of grab the pro tip and yank the paddle out of your hand. And so we've toyed around with that a little bit, but it's kind of one of those things. It's kind of like, if you're going to have a pro tip, you're going to have to deal with that little bit of it. And the pros outweigh the cons. I mean, really, it's like, it might get ripped out of your hand, but it floats, and
durability
slot canyons are really high visible, so you can see them, but you want that durability. But some of the more purists like the Canyon X for that reason, that it doesn't have to come with a pro tip. We have several people that actually put that pro tip upgrade on it just because they want to protect their paddle a little bit more.
I would say this is like, my guess is this is like a go-to paddle for guides. This is what could be a go-to guide stick where the free fall
I think it'll hit a middle
too
ground. Yeah,
I do not
ground sweet spot.
I struggle guiding with that free fall because it's just so heavy. It's a lot of paddle I've been moving around. Where this is cool. I noticed you kind of went with like boy and girl colors. Was that on purpose?
So it's really a manufacturing thing more than anything, because we struggle with issues when things look exactly the same in the manufacturing process, right? So, you know, down the road we may kill a color off of free fall and add it to a slot canyon, but the thing is that we only have X amount of materials that we can choose from in colors, and we have to make them different enough that when this comes down the pipe and you see the blue X weave or the pink X weave, which is really more of a lavender and a periwinkle, but when those come down, the folks in glassing know that gets a different menu, that gets a different layup than if a red one or a green one or a black one comes down. Then that is basically, you know, you're going full tilt on all carbon. And so it's really more of a manufacturing simplistic way to keep making sure that we're getting the right layups on the things that we're wanting to, you know, actually build. And so, you know, we may see if you know, if the blue one does better than the lavender one, you know, who knows?
Wow.
But yeah, it was really more of a, you know, if we're going to have all these different setups, then we need to have a way for the production team to very easily see the difference, because you have to kind of, if you go with me into the production for a minute, if this paddle is sitting in a barrel ready to go into glassing and it's just all raw wood, there's nothing that differentiates that for whoever's going to glass them. So it could easily, we could have where we need, you know, say we need 15 free falls and 30 slot canyons out of that production run right there. And if we have all the colors that don't differentiate it, it just basically gives us less likelihood of actually getting exactly what we want. I mean, that's kind of one of those things. It's I know it sounds really rudimentary, but you have to kind of you have to be in the in the manufacturing piece of it to really kind of grasp it. It's like when square tops are being made, so many of them look exactly the same, 100% from when they come from wood to glassing. Like there's no difference. And we have some that actually have different wood thicknesses, where we have like a VLAM that is a flex and one that's a standard. And the flex is only available in a narrow because you couldn't tell the difference. Like you can't have the guys in the shop going, well, now you need to flex this, so then you tell what menu it needs, you know, and so it just gets too complicated, you know. I mean, it goes back to that mass production of handcrafted products, man. I mean, that's it. It's just like we deal with some little things that may seem like, oh, that's just stupid, that's dumb, there's no way that could be it. But it's like, yeah, you need to kind of be able to say, you know, if it's blue, here's the menu. If it's pink, here's the menu. If it's green or red, this is the other menu. And so, I mean, and that's the way it is. And the guys, you know, I mean, you have to realize that our guys that work in manufacturing, as much as we try and we take them out and show them the why, you know, like that's one of the things they look forward to is in the summertime, we take them on the river, right? And they get to actually go on the river, or they get to row with the oars they've been making, they get to paddle with the paddles they've been making. But, you know, 365 days a year, their job and their focus is to take those 50 paddles that are on this side of their operating area, get the right glassing menu of fiberglass and carbon fiber on it, and move it into the it's done now, and then I move on. And so, that's just one thing coming to them in their day. And then there may be, 3 different runs of square tops that are coming into their day, and then blades. And so, it's just kind of like, we don't want them to have to be like going, wait a minute, I need to go find the menu because I don't think I'm in the right paddle. And, anybody in manufacturing will tell you, you always end up building something, not to where you wanted it to. You always build up, I built too many of those where I really wanted those to be these. And then you're like, okay, well, we got an extra 20 of these. Let's see what we can do with them.
What other gear do you have? What else? What other new stuff do you have?
A little bit of an unknown is that the Dynalite blade you're very familiar with. Probably most of your viewers are very familiar with. And you, as many outfitters do, you go with the extra duty. And the extra duty blade actually has, extra layers of unidirectional in it. It comes with that full perimeter tip on it. And a couple of years ago, we just introduced basically the Pro. And the Pro is definitely, it's really worth the extra money on a blade. If you're going to spend the money on a Dynalite, you might as well buy a Dynalite Pro.
So why not just call it Dynalite and then make it Dynalite Light? Like, everybody should just get the Pro. I'm a firm believer.
Everybody should just get the Pro.
Hold on.
And,
the Pro,
and,
is the
and
Pro
more than likely,
is that the extra duty everything? Is the Pro the one I already order?
No. You get the extra duty because
wait, which one's beefier, the extra duty or the Pro?
The extra duty is.
Okay, so the extra duty is beefier than the Pro.
The extra duty is beefier than the Pro.
The Pro is just light to me.
Pro just stands for full perimeter pro tip,
which everybody should get. I firmly believe
everybody should get. Yes,
that should just all. Zach, all Dynalites should just come with that. There shouldn't, like, I would have, if it was me, I would call extra duty the Pro. Like, sorry, I don't want to do branding extras. Extra duty would be the Pro. That's what, like, Pro. Extra duty, just call it, if it's extra duty, would have the pro tip all around. And then if it doesn't have pro tip all around, I would call it the extra duty in my brain.
No, you want to call it the Dynalite Extra Light.
No, sorry. Dynalite Extra Light or Dynalite. You may have to buy a new one.
Right.
Because I've seen,
but yeah, and it's one of those
full
things.
Perimeter is crucial to me, to like the durability of extra lights. Yeah,
but it is one of those. I mean, it is slowly catching on, but it is one of those things that people just, they get sticker shock. I mean, we know it. Our stuff is expensive. Like you said earlier, you get what you pay for.
You pay for. I mean, I gotta tell you, the number of people that buy oars, I see in my classes, they buy like something super cheap and they use it for a few months and they have to buy something. They realize the importance of spending the money to begin with to get it right. Yeah, that's what, I'm a advocate of all the people that buy for whitewater. I'm a whitewater guy. So we're not talking fishing. We're not talking rowing a drift boat on a lake. For whitewater, I'm just like, start off with extra duty everything. Just unless you don't have muscles and you want to save a little bit of weight because you're worried about, muscles, but the durability makes such a big difference.
Yeah. I mean, people like that, I mean, almost like we're entertaining the idea of actually the lighter Dynalite would just be available in the narrow, because that's the person that really is pursuing that. I want that lighter swing weight.
Yep.
Usually smaller rowers, they want that light swing weight. You put a narrow Dynalite on a polecat shaft, that's a dynamite setup. I mean, it's a great setup that is going to last you for a long time. It has really light swing weight, and you're in the game. But if you're going to put 50, 60 days a summer on rowing, then you might as
with
well
the gear boat, where sometimes you're tapping rocks, you're pushing off a rock in the bottom, low water middle fork, you're pushing off rocks in the bottom of the river. You gotta have the full wrap and as much beefiness as you can have. And
we try and educate any of the outfitters and guides to be like, get the Pro, spend the money, get the Pro, and we try and get them into extra duties really, because they're just they're gonna beat up their gear. I mean, that's
I want to be on your naming products team. You know, I try to name your products. I really think like, yeah, I mean, all outfitters should be using extra duty everything. Like that should be the standard for all outfitters. I would call that the pro. Just like that's what the professionals are using. It's cost more, but it's the pro level. And then I would call the pro just extra duty. I shouldn't tell you what to do. That's not very nice of me. But I have to talk to people about this stuff all the time. And I just feel strongly like that full wrap is crucial for whitewater.
Oh yeah.
And it should be like, I don't know, people should just go straight. I guess in this naming convention, the pro should be the minimum.
Yeah.
And the pros should be using the extra duty because guides beat stuff up hard. Like, we've with that extra duty everything, we hammer the oars. I mean the blades, and they last. I mean they do really well.
So we are getting long on your timer here. I do want to get in the Guides Across America piece.
Oh yeah, I'll bring that up.
Bring that up. Let's chat about that real quick.
Okay. Let me see. How do I add this back in? Okay, here we go. Guides Across America.
So basically, this is something that we are partners with the Guide Relief Program, which was started during COVID in Montana. And, you know, not necessarily your realm, but there is this fly fishing film tour that travels all over the country. They do over 40 to 50 shows in North America in like 4 months, right? And so we are the national oar sponsor of that show, and it has boat sponsors and all this other stuff. But our piece of it is that we wanted to partner with some folks as a way to bring awareness and bring some funding into Guides Across America. And the Guides Across America piece kind of came about. You remember when Hurricane Ian was hit Florida and just wiped out a lot of southwestern Florida? And we actually did a big fundraiser. I mean, the outfitting community is usually pretty good about rallying after the fact and raising some funds for specific things. So we basically got to talking with some other vendors and some other interested folks about like, what if we just actually start making a preemptive fund for the next time something happens? And you start sitting around going, well, yeah, we had these huge fires here in Southern Oregon. We had flooding in Montana. We had a hurricane in Florida. We had fires in Hawaii. It's like, yeah, I mean, you got to put back in place this infrastructure, right? So you got to get, water, sewer, internet, power, and, last thing to come back is tourism. And so the Guides Across America piece is that we're raising funds and raising awareness that it is a resource for all guides. And we have actually, for this year, it's water-based guides, basically either, rafting, fishing, kayaking. I guess if you were doing SUP instructing or something like that, you would qualify. But any guide, a whitewater guide or a fishing guide, could apply to the Guide Relief Program right now, or they could actually, make a donation to Guides Across America. And we have a big price package that's involved in that. And, they could get a set of 3 square tops out of putting in for a little donation. So, that's part of the program. The Guides Across America actually is part of every tour stop. So when you're on the Sawyer page, both Paddles and Oars and Sawyer Station, at the bottom of the whole blurb for Guides Across America gives you what the Sawyer calendar is as far as where we're going to be. And we actually have our team out. We will be at 15 shows in the next 2.5 months. Wow. And basically we're giving away square tops at all those shows. We're promoting the Guides Across America in conjunction with the Guide Relief Program. And this is the kickoff year. And so we're working with other vendors to get more folks, involved to support it. But initially, we want to get it kind of grassroots founded to get it going. And then it would be something that, outfitters would be able to tell you that, like, yeah, we're members of Guides Across America. Like, we're part of this and we're taking care of our guides. We educate our guests about it and they can make donations to it. And it kind of came about where we were talking with folks like in Texas who were more from the fishing element, but they would be like, hey, Zach, we really want to support this, but all the areas that we fish here in Texas, we don't use oars, we're using power boats or something. But the common thread is, like, with anglers, even if they don't use our oars in Florida, a lot of those anglers that go to Florida also go to Montana. They go to Idaho. They go to Colorado. They go to Alaska because they want to go fish. And so kind of that tie basically brought the idea of Guides Across America. It was basically, let's just start with North America for the time being.
Cool.
And start raising awareness of, the guiding industry it's a choice that people make, but a lot of people that go to these fly fishing movies, they go fishing with guides all the time, and it's the same type of folks that come and do a wilderness raft trip. This is something that they're already planning. They're planning it, maybe they don't do it every year, but they're planning it. It's like an activity that they want to do with their family and with their friends. And yeah, it's a good way for us, when we showcase all of our high-end stuff. If you go to a fly fishing tour that we're at, it's going to be square tops and bandits. It's like, it's the premier stuff. This is the crowd that we make those for. That's who uses them mostly. And, so we're really there just talking rowing and fishing. And, that's a whole other side of Sawyer. But Guides Across America is not just fishing. It's all guides, any element. And it really stemmed from the guide relief program came out of COVID, because one of the first things that they were doing is like helping independent guides file as gig workers, because they couldn't get unemployment because they weren't actually in the system. And so that actually was formed in several states, and they were able to get some relief when everything was shut down, which, wasn't too long ago. So, a lot of us learned a lot of lessons during COVID, and, got to take the good with the bad. So this is something that just kind of came out of it. And
so you're asking people for a $25 donation, minimum donation. And if they do that, they get entered to win prizes. And they get
at a minimum
off.
3 square tops of your choice, your flavor, your profile. $1,700 worth of square tops for $25.
So
and actually, if you do that on either one of our sites, you scroll down a little further, says as a thank you, when you're going to actually, if you've already decided that you're going to make a purchase, you go ahead and throw in a donation, then you actually get a discount on your purchase. So we've already had people that are basically making a donation to possibly win a set of 3, but then they're actually getting a discount on their, purchasing a set of whitewater oars that they need right now.
Sweet.
So yeah, the tour goes all the way through April. I think the last one is actually in May. It has a big East Coast element that we don't have several in, but we're mostly through March into April.
Cool.
And
it looks like you're here in Oregon in mid-February, coming up soon.
Yep. We'll be in Bend. There's 2 shows in Bend, and then 2 showings in Portland. And so we'll be on the local home turf there for a little while. We're going down into California for a little bit, and it's definitely big in Montana. Actually, if any of your viewers are in the Boise, Idaho area, we will be there tomorrow night.
Yeah.
So there's 2 shows in Boise, and actually Wendy, who's on the road, she'll be at Cascade Outfitters tomorrow afternoon before the show. And so that's kind of a different side of what we're doing, not necessarily the whitewater side, but the drift boat builders is a big part of what we do. And fishing guides are ones that really can benefit by having a premier oar. I mean, whitewater folks love Premier oars as well, but fishing guides, all they do is once they get in is start rowing. And, you know, the only time they stop rowing is if some catching's going on.
I think oars matter way more for fishing guides than they do for whitewater people.
Yeah.
Like the finesse of the oar, the weight of the oar, the like flex is so important. When we're in whitewater, we just want something you put in the water and moves the boat. I mean, there's better and worse oars, but like weight isn't a huge factor. Like you just want something durable that does the job. Where in fishing, there's so much nuance to it.
Right. I mean, I know you're not a big square top fan, but one of the things that I just constantly share with new sales staff is that, you know, you can go to a show, and, you know, an outreach show or a fishing show, and you'll have a guide come up to you and talk to you about getting into square tops and talk to you about how they've got elbow problems and shoulder problems. And they're just like, because they've been doing it for years, and now they're just kind of like, man, I'm getting beat up. And so you're like, well, what are you rowing? And they're just like, oh, I've never thought about it much. I'm like, well, you know, maybe you should start thinking about it, because, you know, your guests in the front of the boat are flipping around, you know, $1,000 fly rods, and you're rowing with junk. And so, you know, you talk to them, and you have to, you know, I mean, it's like you have to get them to go like, hey, you know, you got to buy these oars, you know, yeah, they're expensive, but, you know, they're going to make a difference. And then you explain to them the benefits of the square top and the light swing weight, and you start, you know, really talking to a guide about swing weight, and then it never fails. Like that person actually does end up buying the square top, or even now like the higher end bandits, where you get in that nice super lightweight swing weight. And you'll see that person a year later, and the story is always the same. They're like, yeah, when I was talking to you, I mean, it was hard to justify that purchase, but once I did it, now I truly feel that I can row for more hours in my day, more days in my week, and I believe I'm going to add more years to how long I can keep fishing guiding. And you're like,
I think for fishing guiding, square tops are awesome. I think like they're massive. Yeah. I think too many people use them for whitewater, and they just like them because they look cool and they're fancy. And I'd rather for whitewater MXGs with dyno lights.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and then we try and really push people towards the carbon. If you're going to run strictly whitewater, you know, go to the carbon square top.
Yep.
But you know, that's another discussion we can have on another day.
Yeah, which really we have to go. We have 1 minute left, and then I see we have questions. Hey, those of you that have questions, I'm so sorry we don't have time. We have to close this one down. We kind of we went over our time and have a hard stop. I'm gonna shut this down. Zach, we didn't get to a lot of stuff. We need to do part 2.
Let's do part 2. We'll do
part 2. We'll do part 2.
It might be in a different location. I don't know if you can tell, but it's much quieter now because we hit the after 2:30 mark and everybody's gone home.
Maybe we can do it in person next time I go down there.
But
we're going to shut this one down. Thanks to everybody. Sorry I didn't get the questions, and we'll see you all in the next episode. Zach, stay on.
Yeah, they can put some questions